Welcome to season 2 of our Going Green podcast. And today we're going to have a look at this idea of planting a tree for carbon offset. And we're also going to have a look at rewilding. So we're going to have a look at two different things today.
Well, yes. Well, first off, Happy New Year to us all. We made it. We made it through the fire and the snow. Apparently that happened in Colorado. But that's a different story. But yes, we're talking about all these lovely new projects that are coming in, because it was celebrating new things. Now, I'm going to start by talking about some rewilding projects that are happening this year.
Okay.
Because I'm really excited about them for two reasons. The first one is we haven't seen some of these species forever in the UK for, nearly hundreds and thousands of years. The other thing, of course, is it's so adorable looking at them, and you can't deny looking at animals is not a good thing to start off the year. And so the first, project that they're doing is the UK is having its first, its first herd of European bison delivered to the UK, to Kent, in the next, at the time of the recording, in the next few days, because it's going to be coming through.
I think there's about 4 of them coming.
There are a total of 4 of them.
So I feel your herd is a little bit...
Hey, they said they're bringing a herd. They didn't say how big the herd was.
Yeah. Now, we have to be careful about bison. A bison's sort of...
Think a cow and then double it.
Or quadruple it, yeah. They're about a ton.
Yeah.
And where do they go? Where do they sit? Where do they anywhere they want to, I think, is the answer.
Yes, they do. Which is why we've only got 4 of them, because we're going to see the project to see if we can cope with them.
So this is going in Kent?
Yeah, they're going into Kent. They're going to a secluded part of Kent initially. That's to get them used to the environment, as opposed to getting them used to people. Because they said once, basically, they're in a wood... They've cleared out a section of woodland.
I thought that's what the bison's job was.
No. So they cleared out basically an area of woodland, inside woodland, so that the bison are then surrounded by woodland, right? Which is the cautious thing. And so in the attempt of letting the bison go through, and then they're going to slowly let the bison roam around. And then they might introduce some more herd, because they only travel in a single. So this is actually a family unit.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I think it's a guy and 4 ladies.
Okay.
But I can't tell you because, we don't know yet. So they haven't arrived. They're still. It's the 8th of January. Then it's set to arrive. So they should be here. And we won't see them for a total of 6 months anyway, because they don't want any photographers, they don't want any press, no visitors, no nothing. Just get them used to it. So.
Yeah, get them settled in, as they say.
Yeah.
And what's the point of bringing them in?
Well, first off, is to introduce a species that was here in the UK that went extinct because they were too hunted, and they vanished probably in the early Bronze Age, that sort of thing. But the other thing, of course, is part of the ecosystem. It's more, yes, you've got your cattle and your cows that they can do the land, but naturally, the only other animal that does that in the UK is horses. You might be saying, and so we wanted another animal that could come basically through, eat wild grasslands, and stomp and allow new species to grow and that sort of thing. But we didn't want to do the wild horses, because horses are not menace. That's the wrong way to put it. But we've already got horses, and so this attempt was to bring a different species back to the UK in the attempts to actually look after them and grow them. Reintroduce them, So hopefully the eventual plan is hopefully to put them up onto Salisbury's Plains, and basically do it that way.
So these animals are going to come along, and part of the function of having them is that they will also sort of clear space, because if they want a bit of space, they will just sort of knock a tree down if they need to. And that's going to promote new plant growth. And we're going for the tangled mess version of wildlife, not sort of all planned out, but sort of allowing natural grasslands and natural sort of meadows and flowers there. And that's going to encourage things like more butterflies and other insects. It's going to bring in things like some more birds, hopefully things like the woodpecker, which we see occasionally, but we don't see sort of enough. And it might encourage those to sort of grow more around here. Sort of, I say grow, it's perhaps the wrong word, but it is the growth of plants, and the plants are going to encourage animals to come here and live here, birds, insects. They're also thinking of doing the same with some natural sort of more pigs, aren't they?
Yeah, they want to do some boar as well, but we haven't get to.
That'll be a little bit later, because they're pretty good at turning over the ground, rooting up seeds, and that then in turn encourages more species to arrive and sort of enjoy themselves, really.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where they're hoping to do, there's quite a few plant species and sort of bring natural plants back into the habitats where they live, which helps that way. There's a whole swathe happening of in Scotland about this.
Well, they're talking about trying to get farmers to sort of take some of their land that's not terribly productive and to sort of put that over to rewilding. Just let it sort of do its own thing, really. Encourage more little mammals to sort of live there, encourage more birds, because there'll be more birds of prey, owls and kestrels and things. Yeah,
as a whole, they're trying to give incentives to do all these things.
And the government are going to pay the farmers to actually do this.
Yeah.
Which is quite sort of unusual, really, in this country to do that.
Well, it's you've got to incentivize them to use the land, and that's how you do it. You say, don't use that land, use our land, or if you're going to not use the land, you're going to need something from it, because that's why you're wilding, or that's why you're not wilding. So it makes sense. It's one of those things where it's an economics part of it. But there are a few projects sort of. I know there's the keep. I don't know. It's essentially it's a different type of cow. It's a Scottish cow they're trying to bring back, and there's some small I say small ponies. There's some Suffolk ponies. Funny enough, they want to put on the Suffolk Downs.
Yeah.
Who would have known them when they didn't? The short little things. Yeah. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of wilding projects that are coming through this year.
Well, they've started one. They've done the Wild Oyster project. They've already gone round in places like Northeast England, North Wales and Scotland. They've been sort of seeding oyster larvae around there, which will hopefully encourage sort of wild oysters as opposed to sort of more cultivated oysters to sort of start growing there, because they're pretty good at cleaning up the environment. They sort of detest dirty water, and they sort of suck it in and clean it up,
filter out. Yeah.
And that's fantastic that they do that. They perform that function really well, and that will also encourage more sea life. And that's great, because all these oysters remove the particulates from the water, and as well as that, they also control a lot of the fertilizer pollution. They get sort of rid of some of the nitrates there.
Yes, they do. Well, that's what this report says.
Yeah, and it's going to allow, if you get the cleaner sort of water with less particulates in there, this means that light can get further down into the sea. It becomes a little bit clearer, and then things like the seagrass can sort of grow, and that will provide lots of food for lots of other fish, which will encourage them to sort of move in there. But the good other thing is, with this seagrass growing, it's a great big sink for carbon, and it will also sort of suck up a lot of carbon dioxide, and that's brilliant. So these oyster beds that they're building are going to be large nurseries for fish. So hopefully all this overfishing that we've had, and now that we've had Brexit and we've got more control over our sort of fishing, we can sort of perhaps get it to build up again. And that should be really good, because that will sort of help us. So rewilding is sort of, I think, going to be much more of a buzzword this year. We've got the farmers going to start rewilding because they're going to be paid. We've got the oyster project going on, and you've got your bison coming in.
And a few other animals that we're bringing back and slowly bringing forth. Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be, you know, a new Britain, new UK with all the new species.
Yeah, I don't think they'll go quite as far as wolves, though.
Well, no.
I'd like the idea, but I don't think farmers would be terribly happy bringing a pack of wolves and letting them loose in the Scottish Highlands or something. But bringing in herbivores, that's not going to be too bad.
No.
So hopefully that will work quite nicely.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So
wolves, bears are out, I think.
Yeah. So another bunch of rewilding is, of course, we're going to start our commitment to, I think, the COP26. At COP26 last year, all the countries agreed that we're going to do more, plant more trees. It was reforest the deforestation.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, they've made the pledge, and in the New Year pledge that they made, or New Year message, the government says they're going to begin to do so. And so what they did after COP or up to the New Year, they basically said, we're going to start a new forestry grant, or essentially, if you want to plant some trees and you need some help in business-wise of planting trees, then we're here to help and give some cash grants and loans and money to help those projects start. That's great. Yeah, fair enough. No problem. So, recently, an investment firm called the Foresight Group took open this, and they bought up a Welsh farm. Right? That's no problem. That's, it's on the market. The farmer sold it, and was selling it, and he had sold it, and they bought it up, and they're going to plan to build a new sustainable forestry group or forestry company, and plant lots of trees that are native to the environment there, and they're going to basically create a logging business.
Well, it sounds all well and good, because we know that when it comes to tree planting, Wales is behind the rest of the country.
Yes.
So they are. And we know that 12 farms have been sold recently in mid-Wales, and they've been bought up by these large investment companies, which aren't UK investment companies.
Well, they're international ones. They do operate here in the UK. They just, it's one of those things where they're just investment firms, international firms.
So basically, we've got to try and do something, and there are a few locals in Wales that are objecting to this, because they've said that it's going to be the wrong sort of trees, except the company said they aren't. They're going to plant the same sort of trees. It actually has, they can't go and plant any old trees like fir trees or whatever, because what they want to do is they want them to grow. And what you grow is what grows there really well.
I know. So what the actual thing is, this investment firm said they're going to grow some trees. Okay, and they didn't state what trees they were going to grow. They didn't state anything. They just purely say this land is going to be used to grow some trees. Fair enough, no problem. And the Welsh farmers said that, they're going to plant lots of fir trees and destroy the look of the area of land, because it's one of those natural, beautiful sight designs or whatever it was.
Well, I don't know if it is at the moment. It's a farm at the moment, and it's sort of
That's
just fields. And it did used to be forests until probably 1,000 years ago, when they were chopped down and made into farms. And they're not going to get rid of all the farmland. What they're going to do is they're going to try and plant these trees on the bits of the farm that aren't profitable.
Yeah.
That's on the hillsides.
Exactly. This is the whole plight we're following. This investment firm has bought the land so it could do things, and it's bought a forestry company, and it's attempting to set up and establish a forestry business here in the UK using Welsh trees, just because, and they want to do it on unproductive land, which is half of this farm, because it was just, and the other half, obviously, what they're going to do is, instead of, they've taken two farms, and they've taken the unproductive fields, and they've going to sell them for logging and forestry, and the productive farms, they're going to merge into one farm.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, it's one of the things, it's just reorganizing the fields, and then you're reorganizing the farm.
I think a lot of the problem comes with this idea that people say, yes, but not in my backyard. I like this idea of reforesting, and I like this idea of doing this carbon offset, but it's going to another company. It's not sort of coming to us. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
So let's just backtrack a minute, and let's go back and ask this thing about, well, what is carbon offsetting?
Well,
because this is what this company is going to sell. So let's ask the question, what actually is carbon offsetting? My company produces some energy.
Yes, and for that energy, CO2 is emitted. So essentially, but we can't capture, or we can't do anything with that carbon. We can't collect it. We can't keep it away. So what we're doing is, although we're emitting it, what we'll do is we'll pay someone to collect it somewhere else. Right, this is CO2. Okay, that's fair enough. That's all right. And so the only few ways we know of technically capturing CO2 is by planting trees. So this is why it's so informed in here. And although you could spend it on a carbon capture plant, like in Iceland, it's sort of not really.
Trees are a lot easier.
They're a lot easier. Anyway, so that's what the plan is. So basically, if you plant a tree, it offsets so much carbon a year, and so that then helps forward. So if you say you give out a ton, how many trees would you need to plant to recover or to carbon capture that ton of carbon?
Yeah, well, this is where the maths goes a little bit odd, isn't it, really? There's a few problems, because if I plant a tree, the first year it's going to grow. It's a little tree. It's not going to do that much. As the tree gets older, it will produce more. And this idea of being carbon neutral, I chop a tree down, I burn it to make some energy, and that's deemed to be carbon neutral, because if I plant another tree, it'll sort of take it back up. Well, it doesn't. The maths doesn't quite work, because it's going to take quite a few years to do that. It does work, of course, if I plant perhaps 10 or 20 trees.
Well, this is the number you get. This is sort of, if you type the simple numbers, how much carbon to offset a ton of carbon, you sort of like, oh, that's all right. And the answer is daftly, you can, to offset just every ton, every person or that person, you would spend probably about £8 to do so. Right? And you ask, all right, how many trees does that plant? Which is the nice, good thing. And that plants about 500 trees.
It's quite frightening, isn't it? The number is sort of, I got to plant 500 trees, and I don't mind planting 500 trees. I like trees. And I will point out that my company actually is virtually carbon neutral.
Yes, I know.
And that's not through the amount of stuff that we use. It's just that we're careful about how much we actually use. We're working on trying to get down to, I don't want to go carbon neutral. I'd like to go carbon negative, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But our problems are, where can I plant these trees? I've got a garden, but I can't plant the trees in the garden because basically it's too small an area. And if I planted a nice big tree in my garden, it would probably sort of pull the house down.
Yeah. So this is where the idea of, right, we need some land to be designated for tree growing. And basically is suddenly trees are seen as a profitable area.
Yeah, because you can grow a tree, and then when it's got to the end of its sort of useful life, then you can chop it down, you can turn it into paper or
exactly. You can do
other things with it. Yeah.
And currently there is a timber shortage in the UK. It just happens to be lots of demand, little supply. So there is an economic sense to start growing trees here in the UK.
Yeah.
And so that then you get the timber, then you can sell it, and then you can make some money, as well as doing all the carbon offset. So basically, someone buys the tree and you plant it, and then it simply is, once it's grown, you can sell that timber for profit. So that's why the whole economic sense of this is coming through.
And in fact, the company may actually pay a little bit every year to maintain their trees, mini forest.
Yeah, 500, mini forest, yeah. But so you can suddenly see what this investment company's doing, but there are actually a lot of investment companies doing this. And the answer is they're not taking over the world. There is an economic sense to do so. And yes, they're trying to bucket and they're
making money.
They're making their money. But is it wrong to make their money at the sense of being climate positive and doing good for the climate? No, I think it's the right way to do business. It's one of those things where you hear all this climate justice and the things. Well, does that have to be at the expense of not making money, essentially, but being a profitable company? And the answer is, if you get the goals or the two things lined up, essentially being climate positive and also making money, then there's no problem. It lines up. Everything's good. The problem is, as stated, is the Welsh farmers, where they were having a massive complaint about doing this, claiming that, it's, not a Welsh business doing this at all. So, but what are the plans for this company, this area, and this farmland to do? So the farm was bought for £130 million.
That was just a little bit out of my price range.
A little bit out of price range, right? The logging or this forestry company that they also bought was for £220 million. So a lot of money put in so they can do this. And it is estimated to be worth approximately £5 million a year to the local Welsh economy. Because, of course, it brings jobs.
So it's a gain. Everybody, in theory, everybody wins here, because we get the carbon offset done, we get some more trees, we're improving the
environment.
Because there's a side issue on this, that if you've got the trees there, when it rains, the trees are going to hang on to that water, which means the water's not going to run off, which it would do on a farm, and go into the river. And that then goes and sort of causes floods later on and further down the river. So if you can actually hang on to this water, it's better. And if you're starting to grow trees over the years, you're going to start getting sort of all the tree sort of bits falling off, and that sort of absorbs the water. And you will get, not necessarily with the trees, but you will get in sort of Wales then large peat bogs that will absorb sort of lots of water
and CO2. This is the whole critical thing, is that it is actually more beneficial to do the trees. Planting the trees helps water retention, which then helps the peat. It's all these positive things that are going to be done for this. But essentially, it's the question of not in my backyard. And
it's different to what we've got at the moment. We've got at the moment a farm, and now you're going to ruin my farm by making it look like a forest.
Yeah. And it's sort of who knows what's going to happen with that forest, and it's going to look nice and the environment's going to be better. So, really,
I'd prefer to look over a forest than I would like to sort of look over houses.
Well, yes,
or even a farm, to be quite honest.
Yeah, fields upon fields of farms. It doesn't. I guess it looks quite nice. You can see the landscape.
Unless you've got a certain other farmer, or I don't want to mention, who can't plough straight.
Well, yes. But having dotted for woodlands, surely that's a much more picturesque view than not. So the idea of I don't like this is a bad thing is only because it's not a local person doing it. Some investment firms come in to do so. If they had investment firm of Wales, or even a local building society doing it, then their attitudes would be completely different. But it's because this huge corporation comes in and they say they're going to stomp all land, take it all over.
Yeah, it's somebody else doing it.
Not the local people.
So that will help with carbon offsets. So that's rewilding.
That's happening. Yep.
And trying to sort of reforesting really, which is what we promised to do in COP26. So it's nice to see that these projects are starting now.
Yeah.
And that hopefully something will happen, and we'll see gradually a better Britain, which is what we all want.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to our Going Green podcast, and next week we'll be back with some more news and views on Going Green. Until then, goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.